Hey everyone, my name is Audrey Anderson, and today I'm going to be talking about adolescent alcohol and drug abuse. So first, I'm going to go over the overview real quick. And so, what we're going to be talking about, we'll do the definition, talk about some statistics and why these statistics are important, and then impacts and warning signs found in children that struggle with alcohol and drug abuse, along with how does adolescent drug and alcohol abuse affect families, along with different prevention strategies, and ways that we could help children who are struggling or in need of help. So, what is adolescent alcohol and drug abuse? My topic was alcohol and drug abuse, and there are many different subsections as to what you could research, and I decided to do adolescence. So, the definition, I found one from childrenshealth.com, and it states that adolescent alcohol and drug abuse is the overindulgence of substances like alcohol, marijuana, other illegal drugs, and over-the-counter drugs. And it's not stated in this um, definition, but nicotine and vaping could also fall under this category, considering it's an addictive chemical. So, why is alcohol and drug abuse in adolescence important to discuss? So, it brings awareness to a prominent issue that children face, and it also helps us as adults learn what we could do if a child we know is struggling with substance abuse and in need of help or support. For me personally, as a future educator, I think it's important for me to have this knowledge in case one of my students is struggling and needs support or help in any way. So let's jump into some statistics. So all of these statistics were found from the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and this was a study done in the past year in 2023. So, pretty recent. And so I looked into the alcohol and substance abuse. So, for alcohol, it was 8th and 10th graders were reported use of alcohol at 15.1% and 30.6%, while 12th graders were reporting use at 45.7% in the past year. And I also learned from this research that it was down from 51.9% in previous years, which is a positive, and I'll talk more about this later on like prevention methods, but um as it has gone down, that means that prevention methods in communities and schools have been helpful. And then substance abuse or substance use, so marijuana use in 8th graders were reported at 8.3%, 17.8% for 10th graders, and 19.6% of 12th graders. And there was a 62.6% of 12th graders that were abstaining from substances. And I think these statistics are important to keep in mind because to see like the actual numerical research that's been done on children who struggle with these different substance abuses. All right, now we're gonna go into the impacts and warning signs. So these kind of are interchangeable. But so for the first impact is poor academic achievement, and this is a big one, as it kind of the research I looked into, kind of talked about how a warning sign would be like a lack of motivation in a classroom. So for instance, let's say like a student has been doing really good in school, and then all of a sudden in like a few weeks or so, they start to have a lack of motivation or involvement in like the class. That could be a sign of alcohol or drug abuse. And another thing that we could look into for poor academic achievement would be like poor grades, attendance, tardiness, things like that. Just not prioritizing your schoolwork could be um, a warning sign, which is also an impact because it impacts your education. And then peer pressure. is also another big one. The research that I looked into kind of stated that peer pressure and then family influence, which I'll talk about in a little bit, are two of the main impacts um, that make adolescents use alcohol and drug abuse. So, like, if a friend has access to alcohol or drugs, they are more likely to share and experiment with those different types of substances, creating that addiction. And then it's another impact is strained relationships with loved ones. So if a child is using drugs or alcohol, it could create strained relationships because of different moods or just kind of like distance between loved ones and themselves. And then, like I said earlier, family influence is also another big impact, specifically parental substance abuse. So if a child sees that their parents are using like substances like alcohol, drugs, over-the-counter medications, things like that, they will see that and they'll be like, oh, if my parents are using it, like I like it's fine for me to use, you know? So that's something that's kind of like the research that I found is that kids that grow up in an environment where their parents are using substances will grow on to become addicted or inherit those traits themselves. And then some warning signs would be like antisocial behavior, and this kind of stems from like the depressants of that alcohol and marijuana bring, just like kind of keeping to yourself and not really wanting to talk to people because they are like under the influence. But another warning sign would be aggressiveness or irritability. Certain drugs can make you more aggressive or irritable, especially if you are using drugs and then not, and then so you kind of have like those withdrawals that create that irritability. And then sleeping more than usual is also another warning sign. Like I said earlier, alcohol and marijuana are depressants, so this could maybe cause a child to be more sleepy or which can also lead to like mental health issues such as like depression and anxiety when they are using those substances. And then lastly, another warning sign would be physical changes. So things like weight loss, bloodshot or watery eyes can also be some physical changes that in a child that might be a warning sign that they are using. So, how does this affect families? So, kind of looking at attachment styles and how a child suffering from substance abuse can it can create more of a strained familial relationship between the child and the parents. Um, just because they will feel more avoidant because they don't want to necessarily tell their parents that they are struggling or just don't think that they need to know. And then another thing or another attachment style would be like the insecure attachment style, causing like negative emotions towards family members, creating more mental health issues, which can also lead to the family having mental health issues, as well. And it can also, I was looking at article from the American Addiction Center, and there are different stigmas, like socially, that can affect the families as well, along with financial um, effects and psychological and emotional effects as well. And then the family environment can be unstable if a family knows that child is struggling with addiction. Um, it can create like some barriers between the family and child, along with, like I said earlier, mental health issues for the family members. And another big one is just like worrying about their child, because obviously no parent wants to see their child go through something like that. So increased worry is another effect. And then disruption of the family dynamic can be another impact on the family. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about the interventions and preventions. So, the DARE program, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about the DARE program, but that's basically just an organization that teaches students not to use drugs or alcohol and just like living a healthy life, along with health class curriculum, which is more like higher middle school, high school curriculum that kind of talks about the same things, but are just implemented in the class curriculum. And then I think the biggest intervention would be encouraging the individual to get help. I think it's important that if you're a parent, you should um encourage your child to get help and just be supportive because I think if a student is or a child is struggling with addiction like this, they need as much support as they can get. And then things like programs for parents to learn about ways to prevent their children from these addictions, along with community-based programs such as like media, schools, um, youth services, like that are shown on the picture to the right, are all things that can help a child stray away from things or from these addictions. And that's all I have. Thank you.